Sorry, I don't know if I just sent you a heart. Am I
It just says Larissa is recording the call.
okay?
Okay.
Um, okay. Uh, Hello, Ryan Jackson. Now I feel
Hello.
really phony. I'm trying to switch votes here. Um, okay. This is my friend Ryan Jackson, my internet friend. Ryan Jackson is a talented screenwriter and a Capricorn and an INFP, which is a great combination, I think. Um, you can find him on Twitter at Ryan Jackson. I should have asked you if you wanted to say anything about yourself. So if you want to say anything about yourself.
Not really. I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, when we talk, I mean, I'll say more, but yeah, I feel like, yeah, I feel like I have to temper that, like, you know what I mean? Like, I hate people that talk about themselves all the time.
Your character will be revealed
My
through
character will
dialogue.
through our discussions. So yeah, yeah.
And we're going to talk about today capitalism in art. Uh, is art a place for, I'm taking like words from our Facebook chat. Is it a place more for nonconformists and outcasts and perverts and psychos? Or is it, or wow, I'm really fucking this up. I really shouldn't have made notes actually. Okay, like what, I guess we're just going to talk today about capitalist careerist artists versus like kind of more authentic bohemian nonconformist artists.
Right.
And we kind of disagree and agree, so this hopefully will be an interesting conversation. I won't bore people to tears because I just made it really awkward. um
Okay, so like, yeah, like just to like we were talking before, obviously before we started, and like to get more like again like to not be performative. I'll just continue sort of kind of where we were going with this, and I look at like in terms of like knowing individual writers are people who make anything, people who make stuff, you know, whether you paint, whether you write, whether you make TV, write novels, whatever. Uh, I have noticed, uh, and you've noticed, and I think everyone kind of noticed. There's this new sensitivity. You know what I mean? Across the culture, we obviously everyone knows that, but specifically in the arts, if you want to call them that, and I will call them that. But I feel that there's a there's a separation, there's a divide now that exists that is more present than I've ever been aware, at least I've been aware of. Maybe it's been present longer than I've been aware of, but to me it's come to light in a real way just now, and just like assessing the landscape and seeing how people respond to things. And like I feel that now you have a group of people who you have artists, and then you have these like pod people who exist within the artist community and call themselves artists, but they really reveal themselves to not be that. And what I mean by that is like what I was saying to you, like typically uh, when it comes to like the world of artists, it used to be this used to be a space where the outcasts would be, there'd be it was a space for outcasts and people who were deemed weird or strange, like I said, perverts, psychos, all that shit, interesting people, you know what I mean? This used to be that.
Our people.
Yeah, exactly, our people. And now there's this new like professional um artist, you know what I mean? Where they view it, they view this whole entire thing as just a means to climb the ladder. Like they think that you should be professional, even in like writers groups. You know what I mean? Like even in writers groups, you will see people call out other people like, "Hey, that's not, you're not being professional right now. Like let's keep it." That language is kind of like, and it's like, wait a minute, this is a private group. Like,
Yeah.
and we're all writers. Like, yeah, I get it. Like if someone's being a dick, cool. Like, but if somebody's just saying shit. This should be a space where you're allowed to say things.
Oh
And
yeah, it's like everything's being policed now, and like that is our safe space where it's
right,
like that doesn't belong in there. You can't be telling people, oh, well, that's somehow offensive on some micro level, like 8 times removed from like this group.
exactly. And it's one of these things that now I understand. Like if you like, I see like there's a lot of like people who exist uh, to just be just to collect accolades.
Mhm.
Like they just want to be, I want to be on this show. Like people's whole entire Twitter feeds are like devoted to like being performative for a job. They're like, "Ooh, I would love to write a show about X, or I would love to write a show about Y." And I'm like, that to me, that is gross. Like one is just gross. Like two, it's like it kind of like shows the type of like the divide that exists. Because I know people who just want to make shit. And like honestly, like I don't care if I ever work for Disney. Like I have no like desire to be like, oh, like work really hard so that like I can create stuff with Disney. And but there's people who would love that. They're like, I want to play in that sandbox. And I'm like, why? You know what I
I
mean?
would be
Because
fired so fast from
right, not only would
Disney.
you be not only you have to like mind your P's and Q's, but like it's just not it's like creative death in a way. Because Disney, like I always call out Disney, and I so obviously I don't care, but I just look at the properties that they own. They own IP that should have been in the public domain decades ago. But because of Disney, they're able to like rewrite copyright law and essentially hold on to IPs forever.
What? What do you mean, like Sleeping Beauty, Snow
Like,
White kind of stuff,
no, no,
or?
no. Like for one, Mickey Mouse, like Steamboat Willie, that original cartoon. Like if you do the date, like I believe, and I could be, speaking a little bit out of turn here, but I believe that Mickey itself, he was not supposed to. He was supposed to be in the public domain, like a long time ago. But because of Disney getting in there and fucking with copyright law, they basically essentially have made it to where like no, Mickey Mouse will never, at least in our lifetime, he will never be. Like if you put out something with Mickey Mouse on it right now, Disney could sue you like that.
I mean, I can kind of see it from their perspective in the sense that it's like they do still use it. So it's like, yeah, you
Right.
can't, like,
But
it would interfere with their business. But I know they have sued small artists. And I think that that's
right.
fucked up because they're commenting on culture, like the zeitgeist and it's art. And so they shouldn't be able to sue people when they do stuff like that.
And not only that, but then you look at the other properties, like when they absorb other companies, and they take all like they like so this monster, and they've literally bought like what is it, Fox, Marvel, like, and some of those characters like that they own literally be in the public domain, literally,
Huh.
and like there should be people who can make whatever, but like because Disney has like some of those comics, I think at least some of those Marvel comics, they should be some of them should have been up for public domain. I could be
Oh
wrong.
man, I would love to write a sub Mariner fucking
But
comic, like, public domain that shit.
but you think about it though, like there's a lot of shit that's in public domain. They make Robin Hood movies over and over again. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like everybody does. Like why does Disney have to be able to own all the IP? Why do they get to own all the intellectual property? Like that they deem that they can have. Like it's just fucked up. Like you know what I mean? They just want to they want to hoard ideas and keep them to themselves, and then like punish anybody else for like anything that they you know what I mean? Like that's how I feel at least. I feel that like that's prevalent because again we live in a society that's governed by uh, capitalism. You know what I mean? That's what this shit is all about. Like to the point where it's like, what about the art? You know what I mean? What about like just expression and being a creative, just making a creative work from an individual point of view, putting it out into the world and letting people, respond or react however they feel, however it makes you feel. Like no, instead it has to be market tested so that it can make as much money as possible.
Yeah.
Not only
And
that,
it
but it
doesn't
has
even work.
right, and it has to be. It can't offend anybody. Like God forbid anything offends people because again we have this infantilization now of fucking culture. It's just everyone's a child. Like you know what I mean. Like not only that, like look at the stuff that adults watch. You have people like line up to watch Avengers and fucking everything that from our childhood is now like marketed to adults. There's a fucking Joker movie that's basically incel
Oh
the
my
movie.
God, you're right. We should all be so
It's
embarrassed.
like it's a fuck, and then they're taking it seriously. They're like, this movie's bad, and it's like, what are you taught? Like they're babies. We're literally adult babies. Like everything is like
That's so depressing.
And
Although I am excited to see the new Joker.
it's like I am too, but like at the end of the day, like it should be one of those things where it's like, okay, you just go see the movie or don't see the movie, and who gives a
Yeah.
shit? You know what I mean? They're like, well, it can inspire, like just stop. Like
I
I thought
love.
I
Sorry,
thought
I
we, go ahead, go ahead.
I love that they're refusing to play ball with like journalists and stuff now. Like they blocked all the journalists from going to the red carpet and getting to see previews. And like now Joaquin Phoenix is just like, well, aren't you perpetuating this? Like they're flipping it back and I am here for it. Take back the night. Like, I mean, I wish it was like, I mean, I feel like it is more kind of like a subversive take on some, like, I don't watch Marvel movies. I don't watch any of that
Yeah,
stuff because I don't fucking care. I think the last one I watched was like the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and I only watched it because James Gunn made it, and I'm a big James Gunn fan, where I used to be anyway, when he was making his own movies. Like, but the Joker, I am very excited to see because it kind of looks like an updated Taxi Driver. Like it has that, like
yeah.
I like kind
It
of
looks
excited.
like the king of comedy. It's like a Scorsese movie. I think Scorsese's producing it, right, or something like that. But
Makes sense.
I
I think it's good.
I wouldn't be surprised. But my whole thing is it's like why I thought we had this conversation years ago. Like I remember being a kid when there used to be like what was it? Al Gore's wife was talking about violence in video games and like fucking, Beavis and Butthead, the kid burned his house down. Like I remember having these conversations about this when I was a kid. Like, and it's like, haven't we moved beyond like this whole idea of like what art does and can inspire in people, But no, it's not. And here's what really bothers me about that is they would rather police artists in shit like movies and entertainment than do anything structurally or in terms of legislatively in our country to fix any of this shit.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to actually do anything of any sort of substance that's going to help, or address anything that's going or any of our problems. But what we will do is we'll make sure that this movie gets put on the shelf, or we'll cast a black Spider-Man, and that'll give you the representation you need. But we won't give black people anything else. We won't give you like reparations or no shit like that. We won't like apologize for police brutality. No. But we'll give you the fucking here. You got a Black Panther movie. Shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
Like
they've totally like pushed the blame onto artists and pushed
right
like the responsibility on artists.
because it's easy. See, that's the thing. It's like it's a empty gesture. So
Yeah. It's like guns are the problem, but let's blame artists.
right,
Like,
it's an
yeah,
empty gesture.
classism is a problem. Like, yeah, sorry.
And I've had this conversation with like other black people, and like I tell them this all the time, where like I don't really believe in the representation matters thing. And I'll say that to say because growing up, I didn't have a problem with finding like African American storytellers, or I remember growing up and having access to like filmmakers, and like whether it was a TV shows and Living Color, like Martin, like Eddie Murphy. Like I remember like vividly, there was always an urban. Well, I hate that term, but there's always an urban space that you could look to, like that anybody of my age or around my age could remember, and like actually are like cultural reference points, like where they're like, oh yeah. So like this idea that like we're now all of a sudden we're seen. I'm like, when I hear somebody, specifically a black person, say that, it makes me think a couple of things. One, it's like, wait a minute, you're not talking about like you feel seen, like in a way that's when you say when a black person sees a Marvel movie and they see a black character in it, and they come on and they go on like online or on social media and say, oh, finally I feel seen, and they're crying tears. What they're saying is they feel seen by what they're saying, besides being embarrassing, like what they're saying is they feel seen by white people. That's what
Oh man, that's
that's
brutal, but I think
like
you're right.
that really think if you really think about it, if you really think like, what do you mean you feel seen? Who? Because obviously you're obviously if you're black and you grow up in a community like that and you have family members and friends, they see you. So who exactly who are you? Who do you mean do you feel seen by? And I always think about shit like that because I feel like a lot of this like and I do think that like while representation is it's symbols are powerful things. Okay. I will admit to that. Like so there is there's value in seeing like someone of a different, whether it's a race or background, seeing them in all, across the board in all forms of, content or entertainment. There's value in that. I'm not discounting that, because like I said, I literally remember seeing those type of things as a kid. But we got to be real and actually have a conversation about, okay, like, but honestly, what are they doing besides giving you a superficial diversity optic? You know what I mean? Because that's what neoliberalism is. Okay, that's what the quote unquote fake left, that in America specifically, that's what they are. The status quo. They're not about like, they're about tokenism. You know what I mean? Which, being a token is disrespectful anyway. Yeah. But that's what they believe in. They believe in that, like, here, like, we won't give you a seat at the table, but we'll give, or maybe we will, but we'll give you the mic. You just have the mic. You're allowed to speak now. Cool. We're not going to do anything for your actual life. You know what I mean? Maybe we'll lift one of you up because you'll parrot the ideas that we want put out there. Like, and they'll do that for sure. Again, that's tokenism. Like, this person will say the shit that we can't, and they'll have the layer of protection of being a minority or a persecuted class. And they'll allow that person to get, and there's a lot of those artists. There's a lot of those people you see now with the blue check marks who are like that. They're like, they say all kinds of shit. And it's funny how, like, the people there's a specific ideology that the majority of those people have. And it's one that is very much like pro the status quo, pro the what is the accepted hegemonic thinking amongst liberals. You know what I mean? And for a long time, I feel like when I was younger, I kind of went along with it, because like, I was telling you before we started recording, like, that like class isn't something that the average American talks about. It's a taboo in our society. Nobody likes to talk about class, but meanwhile, everything about the way we live is dictated by class interest, and like, in terms of, like, I used to be like one of those people who was just like, oh yeah, I vote Democrat and I'm a blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's an indoctrination. Like, but once you really start like assessing it, and once you start going through life and you realize, like, why is this shit the way this is, you start to like you start to get like this kind of an awakening. You have like a moment of like, oh, like, that's the true wokeness. You know what I mean? It's like when you really look at the system and be like, wait a minute, hold up, like, okay, why is it really not that different when the so-called right-wing Republicans in office and left-wing, quote unquote, Democrat is in office? Why is it very much the same shit? And then you really start to look at it like, because it's the presentation, which again comes back to that whole superficial optic shit. The presentation is, okay, as a Republicans in general, far right, they're just on their face, outright naked monstrous. Now, a neoliberal Democrat is someone who they have fucked up beliefs, but they know how to traffic in the language of diversity. They have mastered that. They've mastered the terminology of the woke person. So like, they're able to like do fucked up shit, but maintain this error of like, like, I am enlightened. No, I know it's like, again, when we talk about Bret Easton Ellis, we were talking about him before we were recording, like that scene in American Psycho. Long before there was a term for performative wokeness, you've seen Patrick Bateman in the restaurant, and he's being performatively woke. He's literally saying like, well, what we need to do is we really need to be aware of, like, he was doing that then. You know what I mean? He was doing that then, before there was even a terminology for what it is. And like, if you really think about it, American Psycho is looked at as like, oh, this scathing indictment of like yuppies, but it's also a scathing indictment of liberals. Like,
yeah, the hypocrisy.
Patrick Bateman is a fucking liberal. Like, and you can argue, no, he's not. Yes, he is. Like, first of all, the performative woke scene, further proof. His hero's Donald Trump, and they're like, yeah, his hero's Donald Trump, but Donald Trump's a Republican. In the 80s, Donald Trump was a Democrat.
Yeah.
You know,
and a playboy.
Right. Like, he's one of these Wall Street guys. All those Wall Street guys looked up to fucking Donald Trump for fucking, and you know what I mean? It's absurd, but they did. So I look at that, and then and it brings me flash forwarding back today, or flash forwarding forward to today. Like, I look at the landscape and what society is pushing in terms of like people need to be more whatever, like whatever the new hip trendy thing, like whether it's the little girl Greta Thunberg, we need to be behind her, and we need to, like, if you don't get on board immediately and start parodying the fucking talking points, you're gonna get called out for it, and you're gonna be presumed, and it's like, it is so like superficial and bullshit, because people don't even have their own opinions, they have their opinions gave to them. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, like, so when I start talking to somebody and we start talking about things like, you know, whether it's art, politics, or whatever, I'm immediately like listening to see like, okay, like, have I heard this conversation before? Have I heard it online? Have I heard it on like MSNBC or CNN or whatever? Have I heard this before? Because a lot of times that's how most people communicate. They communicate because they have their talking points given to them, you know, via whatever like outlet that they like ingest on a daily basis or weekly basis or whatever. So like, I noticed that like people do that, and then you have writers or directors or actors or whoever who, they're just like anybody else, they're receiving that same sort of like daily indoctrination of or feeding of the talking points that they need to have. And it's like no one is having like the type of conversations where I see like, well, people are, but I'm saying the ones that like tend to be like out there the most, with the most like that's getting the most eyes on it or getting the most attention, is usually somebody arguing some bullshit point that they really never thought about. It was just, it sounded like, okay, like this is what I'm supposed to believe, so therefore I'm going to believe that, you know. And it's like that disingenuous like bullshit, it comes off in a, especially to somebody who likes to like traffic in like the world of art, like in terms of like when we talk about creating things, when we talk about creative people or creative types and other works from other creative people, like when you traffic in that, like whether it's film, Twitter, or whatever, when you start to have conversations, you start to see like there's division lines immediately. There's a certain type. Like there's the birth movies deaf people, you know what I'm saying? Where they have very like superficial takes on like all their movies that they like. Everything is amazing.
Shout out to my friend Brian.
And I'm not saying that like
I don't think he'll listen to this. So
no, I'm not saying that like everybody that writes for birth movies death has like the same opinion, but I'm just saying that's a very specific type of person. Where like, you know what I'm talking about. Like there's a birth movies death type of person who like, you know what I'm saying? Like their takes are going to be, you can predict what they're going to say. And it's like,
yeah, there's a couple of other sites I don't even read anymore because they're clearly just promoting their friends' stuff, or they're just, they're just like, oh, I like, they're trying to be woke and support something when it's like, but that's not good. Like that looks really bad. You're just like coming up with things to make it sound better. I don't know.
Right. And I feel like, and again, like I am one of those people who I feel like, okay, so back to what we initially were talking about in terms of like the division line in the world of art. Like I feel like if you look at it like historically, like all great art is usually created from the lower classes, like the working class or the poor, and then the people who aren't are like traditionally the people who come from like wealth, who are artists, they're class traders. You know what I'm saying? Like Bret Easton Ellis, for example, is a class trader. To come back to him, if you think about it, because all of his novels are an indictment of that class, of how vapid and hollow and like empty that shit is. Like if you look
I think it's that, but I think he's also like reveling in his. I mean, I love Bret Easton Ellis, but he's very self-indulgent. And I think he's very like this is the life. Like he's making fun of it, but he's also embracing it. And I don't know.
Right, and he's not one of he's a very like polarizing guy. But like I do feel like he, in terms of like, he's a good example of that, because it's like he's what you would just consider a class trader, because like the things that he says about the class that he's from they're not flattering, you know what I mean? And then it depicts it in a way that's like, yo, this is, you know, like these people are fucking monsters, like, you know what I mean? They're horrible. And like
yeah,
and I feel like what you have today, see, the problem is that today, and this is just something I've noticed. Maybe I could be off base here, but I've noticed that marketing, in terms of like how big things, how we're all so subjective, how sophisticated marketing has got, um, over the years. We grew up and like we got to see like all of these like writers, directors, novelists, whatever. We got to see all these works be marketed to us, and it's become this thing that's like very attractive. Like it's very attractive for people to want to go into the world of arts. You know what I mean? Like, and so what's happened is as it becomes more accessible to everybody, and it gets more popular. Like you have rich kids who are like, I'm going to be that. Like I watch Network, I want to be a journalist. You know what I'm saying? That's why journalism sucks now. You know, journalism used to be like, at one point in time, it used to be very working class. Like, it used to be like, fuck you. They used to have unions and shit. Like, journalism is a joke.
Really?
Now. Yeah. It used to be, it's a joke now. Like, if you look at those old movies, like when they used to talk about like the old newspapermen and shit, like they were very working class, blue collar union guys, and they would be fucking like, you know, there was that separation between them and like the news they were trying to do or whatever. But like that doesn't exist anymore. So all these people getting these jobs in media, like whether it's journalism, whether it's fucking film, like a lot of these are rich kids. Like they're fucking rich kids. And the difference is they're not class traders. See, they get into it and they want to uphold the shit. Like they have fond memories of it. This is what gave them the comfortable existence that they have today. And they want to continue. They're invested in continuing the system as it is. They're invested in business as usual. So like you're not getting the same kind of like really like interesting takes or like anybody making any sort of bold against the grain statements unless you're like a completely one way or completely the other way. But like we don't see that. We don't see that. Like you do see it, but you have to go search for it now because those voices are silenced.
Well,
See,
and I think like the ones that like aren't coming from that background, they're not being paid fairly, so it's like
right,
they're more inclined to write the stuff that they'll keep getting paid for and keep getting work, like by
right.
writing shitty clickbait stuff because they have to pay their rent or whatever.
Exactly. And that's what I mean. So it's become the space of the failed children of rich people. You know what I mean? So like they can afford to like not get paid shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're going to, you know what I'm saying? Because these people sit on like they're CEOs and shit of all. You flash forward 5 years later, they're the editor in chief at fucking, you name it, BuzzFeed or whatever. You know, I'm not saying BuzzFeed specifically, but I'm just saying like you name it. Like there's some rich kid that's behind the fucking, you know, calling the shots, you know. And it's like, okay, but like when you really dig into that person's like actual politics, their politics are very predictable. They're like, oh, like, yeah, you grew up in a very comfortable life, and like you have friends and family who would be directly in the fucking firing line of the rest of society if they were put in a sort of painted in a certain light that like, oh, like if you try to actually call them out on their shit, like, oh, this is wrong and you guys are taking advantage. No, they're not going to do that. They're not going to write. It's just like when they did they had that, who was it, the Washington Post or whatever, that Bernie Sanders was like, it's owned by Jeff Bezos, so of course they're going to be mad at me. And then people were like, oh, he's saying Bernie Sanders is saying that the Washington Post is taking stories from Jeff like they can only write Jeff Bezos approved stories. And it's like, no, they're not. No one's saying it's absurd that like they even try to like push that narrative. It's like, no, he doesn't have to do that. Jeff Bezos doesn't have to go to the Washington Post because he owns it and say, don't put out this story. The system is gonna, and it's inherently gonna make sure that nobody that's gonna get in that position is gonna do that type of story.
Yeah.
No one's gonna do anything where it's like, hey, he's shitting on Jeff. You know, from the top down, they're gonna make sure that doesn't happen. They're like, wait a minute, like Bernie's, no, he's anti our boss. We're not gonna let any story come out that criticizes him. In fact, we're gonna criticize him. And people don't understand, like if you go into any job, it's like that. Like, you know what I mean? Any job is like, there's a hierarchy and there's like, you know, not to rock the boat. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter if you work at Burger King, there's a little, especially in America, I don't know about Canada, but in America, every workplace is like a mini Game of Thrones. Like every workplace is like there's like, everybody's trying to fucking stab each other in the back and get to the fucking, you know, and take over and get this high position. And it's like, it's cutthroat because there's a specific type of person that's part of that like managerial class. That's like,
I think I've never noticed because I never really want the jobs I have.
Right. And and I look at this like this. Okay, I'll just be honest. Like my politics, if you want to boil down my politics are millionaires should be shot out of fucking cannons. Like that's my fucking politics. Like, you know what I mean? Like
cut to 10 years from now when you're like the next big screenwriter.
And I look at it like this. Like, okay, now obviously I have bills that I have to pay. I have, I have kids. I have to make sure that they're good. I have to do that. I have no choice but to do that. But I'm also trained to do that. We've been trained since fucking, everything about this country specifically is like you go to work, you make money. Like even our schools are like that. The school day is mimicked like the work day. You know what I mean? It's like it's an 8-hour shift. You know what I mean? So it's like everything is about like getting a job and fucking, being another cog. Don't shake up the system. And at some point, like first of all, I never was that person. Like I don't play well with others. You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean I'm not somebody who can't be worked with. It's just that like I just don't have the capacity to be the type of like I'm not the type of person who reads the book How to Make Friends and what is that book?
And influence people, yeah.
I'm not that person. Like I'm not gonna do that. Like I'm not gonna put like. And there's a certain person that is, and there's a certain like here's the thing, if you're that person, you will get far. Like you will get far here because that person is rewarded financially on all sorts of ways. That person that can come into the room and ingratiate everybody and make everybody like them immediately, that person will get all sorts of opportunities thrown at them. And they will succeed depending upon how good they are at it. But there are literally people right now, as we speak, who are living a comfortable, great fucking existence. And all they are good at is that. They have actually no real skill set other than that. Like they're
honestly, I wish I was one of those people.
I in a way I kind of do too, but I'm one of those people who's like I have principles and like it just is what it is. Like maybe that's maybe people are like, well, that's a cop out. Like no, it's not. I just literally have principles. For better or for worse.
I know all the things. Like I actually read all of those books just out of general interest, like all the Robert Greene stuff, just because I find it all very interesting. But I can't put any of it into practice. It's like I know that if I did XYZ, I could probably be making like money in the field that I'm. But it's like, I don't know. Or maybe I'm lying to myself because I actually don't have any talent and whatever. You did say something before we came on that I don't really have a point. I just kind of wanted to circle back to it where you were like, everyone now is like this aspirational millionaire. It's like even people who are like poor think they're going to be a millionaire.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, I want to talk about that in a second, but I don't know. I feel like we're around the same age. When I was like in art school, it was like cool to be poor. Like we had all these rich kids and I've dropped out of like 4 art schools. So I've seen them all. And there were all these rich kids who were pretending to be poor. And then it's like, they didn't have to work and they were making like subversive art, but they weren't really. They were making just shitty, talentless art. And for some reason because they had that big or whatever, they were getting shows in galleries and doing all this stuff because they had that like confidence and freedom to just be making stuff. And it was really fucking annoying. And now it's like, I think you're right. It's like culture has gone from that, at least in the arts world, to where it's like, now I'm a guru and now I'm like a CEO of my like art company or something. It's like this whole different, people are proud of being a hustler and stuff. It's so I don't know what happened.
It's the game of, that's it. It's like it's this whole like it's a new grift basically where it's like hustler, like the fucking rise and grind people. That's what I call it, like rise and grind Twitter. They've got that fucking meme like rise and grind, get your company. Like there's a whole like cottage industry for that shit. And yeah, like I look at somebody like Malcolm Gladwell, right? He's like one of those guys where you're like, I've read Outliers and shit, but like if you really think about it, like the reason a guy like Malcolm Gladwell is like he's held up as like this figure of like he's like, I don't know if you consider him a public intellectual maybe, but like the reason that guys are held up is because if you really look about it, like the ethos of a book like Outliers is very pro capitalism, like because it's like work your 10,000 hours, like it doesn't matter. You can get good at anything if you work your 10,000 hours. Like he does in that book, he does talk about like how certain individuals were because of the advantages that they were born into, allowed them to reach a certain place of mastery before other people. But by the end of that book, that's not what you take away from it. The takeaway from it is, hey, if I work my 10,000 hours, I can be just as good as the fucking. So it feeds into that meritocracy narrative that I was talking about again, which is more horseshit, you know. And to go back to like what you were saying with the whole like the whole rich kids in art and like in the fucking liberal arts schools and shit. It's like you're right. It's like they have that. It's like they're cosplaying being poor. You know what I mean? They get to cosplay that whole like, oh, I'm edgy and
Yeah.
I'm, you know, I don't wash my hair and I'm dirty now and I'm musty. And like it's like, okay, cool, but like when
Musty.
when you go through that phase, when you go through that phase and you're out of it, you'll be fine. But the actual
Yeah.
artists, won't, they're fucked. Like, you know what I mean? And they have to like, this is who they are legitimately. But that's why I say that
Yeah.
the art space has literally become dominated by the failed children of the wealthy. Like it's literally become that now. Like where like you that's why you got those the Lena Dunhams and all of that shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like these kids who are like, and I mean not no shot at Lena Dunham, like, but she's fucking from privilege. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like and you have these kids who like they're literally getting like you said, they're getting the type of accolades that in the past may have been reserved for somebody who was actually from that type of, you know, which, if you want to call it, challenged background. Like, you know what I mean? Like the artists used to be fucked up people. Like, and not to say that the rich people aren't fucked up, because rich people are fucked up. Like,
Arguably more fucked
more
up.
fucked up. But what I mean by that is like they're not from like that. They're 1%. You know, that's a different struggle. Like it's not even like your struggle is more of one of like, what restaurant do I want to eat at, you know, today? Like you don't have the same struggle as like, yo, I can't fucking feed myself. You know what I mean? Like I can't, like I might have to live under a bridge type of struggle. My job like won't is making me work mandatory 12-hour shifts, or I'm gonna get fucking fired. Like that is, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. That is the normal existence of an average American, which is
Yeah.
I don't have enough money to make it. If I take work off or if I get sick, I might be screwed. Like if you know, like that's the average working American's life. Like, but again, no one likes to talk about that. It's never talked about. Like it's taboo.
I
But
guess that probably is why like people have clung to this self-help culture too, because it's like the aspirational millionaire. It's like we all want to believe, and I'm totally guilty of it. I
we all
have like I have like a Marie Forleo book, like,
are.
and you know, Robert Greene's Mastery, like
Yeah,
right over there.
I've read Robert Greene. I just feel like we're all like, you're also, we're indoctrinated to, it's like we're marketed and we're inundated all the time
And it's
with this
like
shit.
impossible to not aspire almost, because
All
it's
right.
like we're on the internet and we're seeing all these other people with the things that we dream to have or dream to
Yeah.
do, and we're just surrounded by it. And it's like, how do you not start being like, well, maybe I can do it, or like I want that instead of my crappy like existence that I have now. And then when it takes longer and it's harder and you're maybe not going to get there, it's like everyone becomes just like so defeated. I
Yeah.
don't really even, I mean, I'm not even holding that against the people who are successful or who are rich or whatever. It's like you do, you know, if I was like, if I was born into a millionaire family, I'd be fucking living that shit up too. Like I would be like, fuck you, I'm not working, like whatever. But I don't know what the like solution. I mean, I feel like back to the capitalism thing, it's like capitalism kind of is the solution to capitalism, because how are you really supposed to like dig yourself out and create something without trying to like game the system in a way? I like,
There's
I don't know
no,
if I'm getting off topic. It's like, but it's like Joseph Kahn. I'm you probably follow him on Twitter too.
yeah.
He fucking hilarious. But he like, I remember when I went to the detention screening, he was like talking about how the only reason detention got made was because he did all these music videos and he had to pay for it himself. So it's like you kind of have to like use that system to your advantage if you want to make your own weird art. I don't really
Yeah,
know.
I mean, it's there's no, and that's the thing. And I actually I was posting about this online recently, which is that whole idea of like, you know, people who identify themselves as a capitalist, but then they call themselves a leftist, and you're not like, but it's not a choice. That's a choice. That was the whole point of
Oh, right. Yeah, I saw
like
that.
it's a choice to do that, but it's not a choice to not participate. You have to,
Yeah.
like you have to, if you have to participate. So like this idea of like when people like give you pushback for like having any sort of like like left-leaning ideology where it's like, well, what about capitalism give you, yeah, what the fuck, I'm not going to starve. Like I'm gonna participate, but that doesn't mean I'm advocating for the system's existence the way it is in its present like form. Like I'm not. Like I'm. That doesn't mean. But does that mean I'm gonna starve? No. That means I'm still gonna survive. But see, that's the thing. That's what they try to use against people who are for like any sort of like what they believe is a radical stance on society and how we're governed and like what structure we exist under in terms of, again, I don't I don't fault anybody for wanting to be rich.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because in our society, that grants you freedom. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You're not stuck in the rat race of having to fucking punch in and punch out or worry about some asshole opinion on what outfit you wore to work or trying to police your conduct. But we can't escape that anymore either. Because like we've had this discussion too. Like the HR department is now in our everyday life. Like the way we used to be a clear division of like I'm at work. I have to adhere to the code of conduct at work. They have a whole HR department. If not, you have to go see them. You could get write up or possibly fired. Now, you know, that exists outside of work too. You used to be able to like, all right, I'm out of work. Fuck this. I'm gonna kick back. I'm gonna have a beer. I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want because I'm fucking, I'm not at work no more. Now it's like, no, 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 no. You have to be the perfect employee at all times. You know what I'm saying? You can't say anything controversial. If you do, that means you're fucking a monster or you're scum. But meanwhile, there's no person walking around that could actually live up to the standard.
Yeah.
Like it's unattainable. So what they're advocating for really is widespread fake, like phony, like that. What Hillary Clinton was saying. Or was it Biden or Hillary? I think it was Hillary. I have a private face and a public face. You know what I'm saying? I think it was Biden that was saying that.
I mean, I think that's all
I mean,
politicians.
they can all, yeah.
Yeah.
But that whole like thinking of like a public face and a private face, like now it's like I have a public face at all times. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter that like I don't believe in the shit.
Yeah.
It just matters that you know what I mean? And then like,
Well, and I think like we're the type of people where that's a huge problem, like because that's not in our core values, where it's like hard to be a fake. So it feels like an attack almost in a weird way that we're surrounded by these like fucking phonies. And you want to call them out because it's like, fuck you, you're not this person. I want to like kind of want to like ruin your life a little bit. I mean, I guess that's cancel culture, but I want to do it to the cancelers of
right. And I feel
because it's like you're not good either.
Right, and that's my whole issue with the whole idea of like fucking cancel culture. Like I'm not for it because it's like, like we live in like a bourgeois democracy in which like the people that vote are generally more materially comfortable and like they have a lot to lose from like a Sanders presidency. Somebody who's like gonna somebody who's gonna try to like actually make any sort of material gains for I like to say the unwashed masses. You know what I mean? Like everyone else, like they're very comfortable. That's why you see like there's a lot of like anti like any sort of like Sanders left wing like shit from like quote unquote liberals. Like like they don't like that shit because the truth of the matter is they're complicit in this shit. Like they're very complicit in like yeah, Republicans are fucking gross, racist fucks. You know what I mean? But like in general, like you can find more Republicans outwardly racist than you would a liberal, but you're just as fucked up because you're equally invested in things remaining the way they are. Yeah. You just don't want people to be overtly fucked up. You just keep your shit, like keep it like you got to take it down like 7 notches. That's why they hate Trump. He's not. He's on 7 or 10. And they're like, no, you can't do that or say none of that shit. Like you can't be that way. Now you can have all the fucked up policies you want, but you have to have the decorum. You know what I mean? That they're so obsessed with this idea of civility. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the civility is important to them. It's like again, it's a very elite position to have because it's like those guys from like those what are they, like the aristocratic people who used to challenge each other to a duel. There was rules in the game. You take your fucking white glove off and you slap that guy, and then he takes his white glove off and he slaps you back, and then you say, okay, we're gonna meet outside, we're gonna go back to back, take 12 paces, turn and shoot. Like that's what they want. They want to.
I mean, I wish that actually literally happened still.
But they don't want to engage in like a conflict with anyone outside of their rules. See, it has to be
Yeah.
their rules. That's what that whole professionalism shit is, where it's like, let's be professional, guys. It's like because they want to level the playing field. They want to be like, or they don't want to. They want to. They don't want to level the playing field. They want to keep it in balance.
Yeah.
Just like no. If we're gonna fight, you're gonna fight my way. You're not gonna fight this other fucking way, like you fucking poor savage. You're not gonna do that. You know, you're not gonna fight dirty. No. You're gonna fight straight up where I can see you, eye to eye. You can't do any kind of like that's how they try to do it. They try to dictate the bounds of the conversation. That's why they like to silence people. That's why they don't like people saying shit. It's because they want to be like, no, you're wrong. You can't. There's no debating, and that's what's so insidious about this like new sensitivity that we have in terms of like how they use marginalized groups of people. So, which kind of ties back into the whole representation thing. See what they want now, because corporate culture is now like they've caught on to this idea of like this whole idea of being woke. Like, so corporate wokeness is this, and this is what it boils down to. Okay, we don't want you questioning us in the fucked up shit we do, but you can. But if we put a figurehead in who is of an oppressed person or an oppressed group, if we put them in charge, you can't question them now. So now we can do all the same fucked up shit we always do, but you can't question this person because that person is trans or that person is a black woman or that person is a whatever, you know, fill in the blank. That's what they want. And see, like, and I feel like that shit is insulting to me. And it's like it shows your contempt for the rest of society. Like, that's why I look at it. And when people are like, oh, you want to have these, I'm like, no, because you guys keep using these black people or whoever, you use these people as fucking chess pieces or like fucking, again, that's a tokenism shit. Like you really don't give a fuck. You just want somebody there who's going to continue business as usual, maintain the status quo, but no one can, they're above questioning. And I'm like, no one is above questioning. Like no one, I don't care what background you come from. Like if we can't have a discussion about things, then we're fucked. You know what I'm saying? Like we're fucked. Yes. Is there problems now with having someone who is clearly a white supremacist in terms of he's invested in the system of white supremacy, which is our president, and clearly using like dog whistles and shit for fucking racist people? Yes, it's a problem. But while I say that, like he doesn't send, like, I don't know, like I've said this before, like Donald Trump doesn't bother me. Because the country is
the reaction to Donald Trump is more what's annoying.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. But like, there's a certain type of person who he like fucking sends into like a fucking epileptic seizure when anything he does, and it's like because what he represents is like to people of a certain class, he represents like the mask is off. Like it's like, oh, don't do that. You're fucking airing out dirty laundry in public. Don't do that. We don't do that here. Like that's low class. We don't do that. But like meanwhile, like somebody who grew up in the inner city or somebody who's like they've always had this view of like, yo, America's fucked up. Like I don't know about you, but like the whole police shooting shit happened under Obama. Like Kaepernick started kneeling under Obama. Why? And guess what? Before that, Bush, there was fucked up shit in Bush. There was fucked up shit with Clinton. Like. So there's a certain mentality amongst like marginalized people, whether it's African American or not. We're like, this country is fucked up. Like we look at it as fucked up. So like when Donald Trump's in office, it's not really that much of a surprise. It's not a shock to my system. I'm not this like a suburbanite, you know, upper class person who like, you know, my life, because literally these people's lives have not changed one bit during the 4 years of the Trump presidency. Not one bit, if you notice. But they're fucking flipping out. Now, the people who are legitimately probably changing, their lives are probably changing, are the people like who their shit was fucked up already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like,
they're not going on Twitter and screaming at people.
Right.
That everyone's this and that. Yeah.
Because they're too busy trying to just make ends meet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like to be able to rage on Twitter is a luxury. You know what I mean? Like to be able to be like, oh, like the president's at Donald Trump. Hey, at Donald Trump, you're a fucking fuck orange face, fuck whatever. Like, you know, like. That's like no one's got, if you're really like out here and you're trying to like you're not worried about you don't have time. You simply don't have time. Like you have to, you're trying to keep your situation stable. You know, you're not worried about like fucking Trump and the next thing that Trump says. Oh yeah, Trump's a fuck. Yeah. Well, big surprise. Like, you know, yeah, he's racist. So is the fucking country. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
and like the motivation I think for a lot of that too, is like beyond just like them having the luxury of like squawking, is like that they're just trying to get attention and they're trying to be like applauded for being like one of the first people to like point out something's this or that. Like they just want to get prizes and like get it's just all about attention and power and like increasing their status by being like a tattletale and being like a virtue signaler and stuff. And it's like I don't know, it's kind of terrifying. It's like
yeah,
everyone's a hall monitor now. And it's like, but it's not fun anymore. Like, it's like, sure, were things like a little fucked up before? Yeah, but now they're even more fucked up in a different way. It's like people can always do better, but I don't fucking know.
it is. When you think about it, like it is bleak, but there is I look at it like I try to weigh things like, I don't try to be like, oh, everything's so fucking, we live in a hell world, but like,
I
yeah, but
do
like
feel like
we
that.
do in a way. I like, it's just like, it's a hell toilet, but like we
Although it's fun to poke
we're
the poke the
right. But I feel
Satan's.
like I no, I feel like there's some good things coming too, because like I feel like there is a new sort of like there is a new sense of like people are starting to get the idea like this whole shit is a sham. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and like I was mentioning to you, like it's gonna birth like a new counterculture. Like I really believe that. Like because you're starting to see it now. Like there's gonna be a new counterculture like that's going to be a direct reaction of all of this shit.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
and it's like they can't stop it because there's just so many people that are like, you know, this is bullshit. You know what I mean? Like this is not like, and I feel like uh the arts used to be the space where you could do that. You know what I'm saying? Like it used to be the space where you can shout out and critique not only culture but like, you know, and point out the hypocrisy and all of the bullshit. Like, and they don't want that. They want to control it, and they want it to be fucking. It has to be, again. It has to be a Disney product. Everything has
Yeah.
to be like this safe, you know, thing that everyone can fucking have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that it won't offend nobody, and that's just not. That's that's anti art. Like
Yeah.
that is not good. Nothing of, we will not remember half of this shit. We don't remember it now. Like all this shit that's coming out, like now that like, first of all, I have a thing of like nobody fucking reads like that anymore anyway. So like the novel's kind of like this relic of the past. But like so our main forms of entertainment now are like, it's kind of shifted from film. Now it's sort of like this TV monster hybrid thing, which is like streaming and whatever. But most of the shit we won't remember. We don't like. There's so
Because
much
we
of it now. We're in it.
consume, yeah, we consume
Yeah,
too much.
it's so much of it now, anyways. But like most of it is, you don't. If you've seen one, you've seen most of them because it's all
Yeah.
created with the same template. They think they're being edgy, but you can't. Like they're not. They're, you know, they're not doing anything that's like, you know, and like that's not like that shit right there. It's a bubble that's gonna burst. You know what I'm saying? Where it's
Yeah,
like,
I do.
and it's
Because I think like all the extra like policed stuff is going to like give birth to like really extra like over the top subversive stuff because people are just so angry. But I think like I guess the capitalist inside of me is like I think it's like you have to hit right at the perfect time. So I think like the artists who were bucking against this like 2 years ago or whatever kind of got fucked over. Like it's like their stuff wasn't really paid attention to because people weren't ready. And I think now people, it's like what you said, it's like I can see it online where people who didn't disagree with it like or wouldn't openly are now starting to get like are now starting to vocalize a little bit, and people who I've kind of watched people shift. And it's like I think but I think that like for the art it's going to be like for films and books and paintings and whatever, it's going to be the people that hit right in that fucking sweet spot before that then becomes mainstream again, where it's like I don't know if it was like in the 90s, but I feel like there was this whole jerk kind of asshole culture for a while where it was like I used to listen to like the Jerky Boys and stuff, and it was like, you know, I mean, I don't know how long is like I guess Howard Stern's been around forever, but I feel like there was like a moment where Shock Jock kind of like, and then that whole Vice fucking
yeah,
magazine when it
yeah,
was like free and they were like making fun of people. I feel like it's gonna be like that again. Because
yeah,
and you're right, it does come in. It has happened before. Like My ex-boyfriend, he made me watch I always say make me. He didn't make me. He showed me the movie Lenny about Lenny Bruce with Dustin Hoffman in it. Have you seen that? It's
No.
so good. It's like so good, but it's like, oh shit, this stuff was happening decades ago. It was just in a different form, but it is all related to capitalism and policing and censorship, where it's just like people trying to control the public to make money
Yeah.
and like have
And
their own agenda like
right.
served.
And that's what bothers me the most about like the way we talk about like this shit is there are people who are pretending that they care about the like marginalized groups, oppressed groups, all this shit. Like they're but it's you don't like you don't give a fuck, and it's obvious. Like if you take if under any if you literally look at like what they actually are saying and what they're defending, with it doesn't hold up to any scrutiny. Like it's clearly superficial. Like you don't give a fuck because if most of these people who so-called want this, if you actually said today, hey, let's burn this whole shit down and start over, like fuck a president, we're gonna burn this shit down, they were like, no, my god, we can't, we have to operate this way because they're invested in maintaining the way things are. So like that's what bothers me. It's like if you want to talk about like the needs of like people, like whether it's black people, whether it's the LGBT community, whatever the case may be, if you're gonna have that conversation, like don't be fucking cynical like about the conversation. Be like, but they're cynical as fuck because they really don't give a fuck. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're just saying this shit to win brownie points, social brownie points.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's so transparent. Like it's so obvious. Like we know people like that. They're just fucking virtue signaling. Oh, virtual signaling is not a thing. Yes, it is. It's very much a thing, and it's what you people are engaged in.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, it's like, oh, like I'm gonna come off a certain way to everybody else, but I'm not about to do anything that's gonna fucking materially affect my fucking my li- my lifestyle is not gonna change one bit, and I may be willing to pay you some sort of like shallow gesture, like in terms of like me showing, hey, like I'm with you, but you're not really with it because when it comes down to actual like real world like change, when we talk about like, yo, okay, this is fucked up, we need to stop doing this. Well, we can't do that. What do you mean
Yeah.
we can't? Well, because that's just not the way things work. You're being idealistic. You want a utopia. It's like, okay, okay, so you really don't believe none of the shit you're saying. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you really don't believe because you're invested in things staying pretty much the same way. You just want it less like overtly racist. And that's my problem with like 100% of the shit that I see. Specifically, when I view writers doing it, I'm like, okay, like you're a fucking. I look at you a certain way when you do that. Like I get it, like writers come from all sorts of different backgrounds, lifestyles, et cetera, et cetera. But like as a creative person, like if you should be totally anti anything like that.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like uh, uh, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I don't have an ideology. I do, but like I don't place ideology over aesthetics. Like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like creating shit, like I feel like what I believe is going to come through anyways. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's going to come through anyways. Um, because I actually, if you have, let me rephrase that. If you have actual principles, it will come through in the shit that you make.
Yeah.
See, some people don't have any, so it's not going to come through regardless. So they're
Yeah.
gonna write fucking shit, and it's like, oh, that was fuck. Yeah, but they don't really have any fucking principles, and it's clear. But I'm not gonna sit here and sit down and try to. I'm not a social worker. You know what I mean? I'm not a fucking. We aren't social workers. Writers aren't social workers. Like we're
Yeah.
not. Like we're just like the whole idea of like somehow writing. And there's a lot of people that are pushing this, and I think it's gross that they're pushing this idea like as a writer, it's your responsibility to write the world as it should be. And I'm like, no, what?
Well, my version of what the world
The
should be
world
is
should.
probably very different from other people's.
And I'm like, that's
Chaotic
not that's
neutral.
horseshit. Like, you know what I mean? Like how the world is. No, no. Like I'm interested in writing the world as it is, and then
Yeah.
like you know what I mean, and then making some sort of critique of that world. You know what I mean? Or like like oh, this idea that we can't have any characters that are racist or we can't have any characters that are misogynist. Why it exists?
I
you know.
know, and it's like just because you have a racist or misogynist character in your movie doesn't mean the fucking art is. It's commenting on that. And I
But
don't know why people can't separate. It's like, do you actually have like enough brain cells to talk if you can't
that's the problem. It's the
contextualize?
flattening of culture. Like that's what it is. It's like so when you flatten out and make everything safe, there's no room for nuance. None. It's lost. So we don't have nuance or context anymore. Like
Yeah.
everything is taken like as like you said something and it means this directly.
Hmm.
Like this person is racist, so that means this is racist. And it's like that is such a fucking like that's just a moronic view of how to ingest any sort of art or whatever. Like if you're not actually taking the time to be like, yo, what's the motivation behind what this person is saying, or what's the motivation behind like, or what's my interpretation of what this writer or whoever artist of any whatever, what are they saying? Like what, like people don't do that. They don't even bother. They're just like, this is wrong. You said the buzzwords that you're not supposed to say.
Yeah.
You're canceled. You know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
know
and
it's
that's
like a fucking computer. There's this really great quote by Anna Lily Amirpour. I don't know if you saw all this controversy when it went down 2 years ago, but she said, just because I show you something doesn't mean I tell you what to see. And I thought that was like, that pretty much sums it up because it's like, you're just projecting your own shit onto a movie or your own agenda. And it's like, that's not on the artist, like to deal with your fucking ideologies or your like if you
right.
don't like an artist or you don't like the movie then don't watch it. You can complain about it, but like you can't interpret then your interpretation as the artist meaning something, although I fucking do it all the time.
Right, but
I do it in the positive way.
I feel like cancel culture, like it ignores the inherent like duality that exists within humans. Like like we all have like that dual, or there's more than one side. Like everyone has moments where they're shitty. Like
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like just like everyone has moments where they're not. Like, and it's like that's why I don't like it. Like I don't give a like. Yes, there's fucking people who I hate, but like in terms of like I hate their fucking, they have monstrous ideas and they have
Mhm.
shitty politics and they're fucking just pieces of shit. Yes, but I'm not for this overcorrection for the fucking, some fuckhead did something over here. It doesn't mean we need to overcorrect for everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's just not what we fucking, how does that lead to anything but more nonsense? You know what I mean? Like and then you're starting to silence people, for the wrong reasons. And it's like, we're never going to, if we're not able to be adults and have
Yeah.
actual discussions about complex issues in a nuanced way, then like, again, it's going to be more of this infantilization, which is like treating everybody like babies and not giving anybody, you know,
Well,
uh,
and we're doing it for like a tiny fraction of society. It's like there's like the tiny fraction of society that complains about everything. I don't know how big it is, 5% or whatever, that complain on Twitter all the time and police people. And then it's like the 5% that are like ultra racist and misogynistic and whatever else. But it's like that's actually like a really small part of society. And they're controlling how everyone in society is moving right now. I went to like this free lecture at U of T yesterday that was navigating racial satire. And like half of it was just people asking the guy who gave the presentation, Lavelle something, like they were just asking questions, and I was trying to like really take in like what are these people asking, and it was like every little piece of society in the room where it was like, oh, that person had a very aggressive hot take, and then that person was the cranky old man that's just like, everyone's always making these jokes about the women are making jokes about their vaginas, and like men are making jokes about their race, and everybody, I don't know. But then it was like most of the people were like asking very like tempered, just logical, sort of like inquisitive, like just conversational questions. And it was like, oh, this is like a better, like this is probably how society really is. It's not
yeah,
these extremes. Anyway,
yeah.
sorry, I don't even know if that's related. I just kind of went
No,
off
no,
there.
I think it is definitely related, but like also I think that like the internet does this sort of like the internet is, the way people present on the internet is void of any sort of like context. It just is. So like the reactions online are just they're contextless as well, because there's no, it's just, so it's like that when you actually talk to people face to face, it's very different. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like it's like
Yeah.
it's very different. And like I feel like that's another reason why I don't really like this new like sensitivity that we have, is because we don't we don't take that into account at all. Like we don't
Mhm.
take that into account. Like, oh, like the way these interactions aren't normal, and they're internet interactions, and people really wouldn't be this heated in a face-to-face conversation, or things wouldn't be, even if things got taken out of context, it would be more based on like things like body language and inflection and all the things that are missed through a
Mhm.
fucking text exchange on a social media fucking platform. Like, so I feel like we now police the real world how we police the internet. So
Yeah.
that's to me that's madness. You can't. It's again like you're what they're doing is whether they know it or not, whether they have good intentions or not, they're creating this fucking. It's like a volcano. It's just fucking pressure. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? There's a pressure coming, like where people are just getting sick and sick and sick, and it's gonna fucking, it's gonna explode. Like it's gonna be one
Yeah.
of for people to be like, fuck it, we're not gonna take anything seriously anymore. You know,
It's gonna explode with like crazy art. Like
I think that's my hope. I think it will, but I definitely feel like,
I'm here for this counterculture, Ryan. Like I want to talk about this counterculture. We gotta
I,
be in on this. We gotta get to the front of the line for this.
I agree. I definitely I feel that it's coming because it's just there's too many people like that are just in this shit for the wrong reasons,
Yeah.
and and more are there certain, like, it's become common, like now, like people talk to each other who are like, yo, did you see what did you see what he said? Like, what the fuck's up with
Like
that? Like, you know what I mean? There's a
comedians.
lot of like conversations on the side amongst people, like in groups and shit, where it's like that's very common now. It's like, yo, what? Like there are people who you just know, like, okay, like this person is like, we're having, wait, what? You know what I mean? Like that's always was weird with me, like that in terms of like groups of like other creative people or writers and shit. When like somebody reveals himself in a weird kind of way, which is like, yeah, I expect you to be kind of weird, but like when you come at me with this like weird kind of like PC shit, where I'm like,
Mm.
it makes me double. I'm like, hold up, wait, hold. It's like you spotted like an imposter. Like, you're like, wait, what? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because
The
like,
mask drops.
and what they try, yeah, right. And what they try to do is they try to make it seem like, oh, you're a monster for thinking that way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because, and I'm like, no, like nobody I know is pro like any of the, like, I don't know, like in terms of like, I don't have any friends that are fucking like pro racism. Like
No.
I don't know a single person that's pro rape. Like I don't
No,
know
me either.
anybody that's like all this fucked up shit. Like I don't know, like, and I'm sure there's fucked up people out there. There's a lot of like,
Yeah.
cases where you can be like, that person's a piece of shit, that person's a rapist, this
You
person's a racist.
usually know. Like you
But you
kind of, because
usually
you can
know,
smell
right?
them. Like, yeah,
Right.
you can smell out those people.
And my thing is like, so now you have a conversation. It's just automatically assumed if you say something that's like a little bit with a little bit, just like, like if you make a fucking lewd comment, you're like, now you're in this box. Like, oh, he's a piece of shit. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like that thing, and that's what I mean. That's that internet, the way the fucking people interact on the internet has become like the norm. Like it's like, oh, that's just how we view people. I don't think that everyday regular people view people that way. I just
Yeah.
think that the most vocal view people that way. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these vocal, like people, again, people of a certain class, a certain like background, like they view people that way. You know what I'm saying? Because again, they're like, they live in this fucking bubble where like they don't, they see their same group of friends. They see shit on their phone. They all share the same fucking, values, in terms of like they all are the neoliberal homogeny. Like they all have that same, like, this is the accepted ideology. You know what I mean? Just like people on the right have their own like accepted bullshit conservative ideology. Like it's like, all my friends think this way. I think this way. Anybody that does not think this way must be discarded. You know?
Yes, it's so wild. It's like you can't do like anytime I do like any where I'm like, should I send this tweet? And I send it, it's like I will lose acquaintance friends. Like they'll unfriend me, they'll unfollow me. And personally, I'm just like, oh well, see yourself out. You know what I mean? But it's crazy. It's like I posted even just that tweet being like, I'm looking forward to like the Louis C.K. show. Unfollowed by people I know, and it's like it happens. Like, does that happen to you too? Where it's
Yeah,
like,
of
when
course,
did
of
this
course.
happen?
Yeah. That, because again, that's what I mean. Like it's like you can't even joke anymore, because if it's not on message, you're gonna, like, people are like, I'm not following you no more. Like you're again, and that's okay. So what are you going to do with this? Like, okay, these people, you're creating a new class of people, the canceled class. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like these are the people you, and again, that's it. That's what I mean. They're creating a new counterculture because while some of those people are legitimate pieces of shit, not
Yeah.
all of them are, and they're just going to be like, oh, we're part of this castaway group. You know what I mean? Like we're the
Yeah.
outcast. So
And they're gonna
again,
make better art.
right, and that's what's all you'll see in the coming years. All of the interesting, good shit is going to come from there, and
Yeah.
then everybody's going to turn and look like, oh, what are they doing over there? You know, and it'll be one of those things where it's like, okay, at that point, you
Fucking
know, then
sheep.
they'll try to co-opt it and bring them into the group again, and then you know, and
Oh, I'm here to point them all out and be like,
and,
I've got screen caps of shit that you wrote. I know you're a hypocrite, you fucking sheep.
that's the only reality I see happening. You know, other than that, like it becoming more like a more of an Orwell novel than it already is. You know, which is just some fucking dystopian nightmare.
But I
Like
think that's why we both like say stuff. Like we speak up because it is a fear. It's like that's my worst fear as a failed writer. It's like I might never get to see success because I'm going to be canceled and I've censored before I even say anything of value, and it's
right,
terrifying.
but that's and I feel like there's an acceptance that you have to just accept, like, and I think it's kind of healthy because it's like I'm just gonna do what I do, and like I'm just gonna do it within a vacuum to a certain degree, and just because I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. I understand why I'm making what I'm making. And
Yeah.
that needs to be the barometer for anybody. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to make it and put it out and let it be what it is. And don't
Mhm.
engage in this shit. Like, if you're like, because the people that are going to fucking find your shit are going to find your shit. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can do. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing like this whole idea of canceling people is just, it's not a real thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that people don't understand, like, canceling is not a real thing. All these people that are canceled, they're out walking around right now. You know?
Well, and
I,
like the thing is like back to the capitalism sort of thing. I don't know
um,
why I keep bringing it back. It doesn't matter, but it's like people are figuring out how to monetize being
being
canceled.
canceled.
And so
Right.
once it's like people, like enough people are like, actually, I'm going to use this to my advantage. I'm going to become even more provocative and
Right.
more fucking insane with my hot takes because it's making me money. Like it's just creating this like
And
worse, but it isn't entertaining to watch it all play
and
out.
that's capitalism in a nutshell. That's why cancel culture can exist in capitalism because everything can be monetized, everything. So all you got to do is figure out how to monetize it, like, and somebody will be willing to give you money for it. So like it's like this beast that they've created now, and it's like they're like, oh, we're invested in this. All right, but understand that, like, you may fucking cancel some people, but like they're gonna come back. Like,
Yeah.
and it's good. As soon as they find a way to make this, they're gonna come back. Like, because that's just the way this shit works. It's the way it's set up to be. And it's
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like, this is something that everybody created. Like, so the new backlash is something that is created by the people that are so against it. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, so it's like there's no measured response to anything. Nothing. There's not a measured response at all anymore. So it's like, okay, well, the logical, outcome of this is going to be people are going to get fucking fed up, which they already are, and you're going to have it's going to splinter, like it's going to splinter off into new things, new avenues, new outlets, new fucking subcultures, all of that shit. That's what's happening now. So like I
Yeah.
said, and hopefully within that new counterculture thing we keep talking about, that's where it's going to be born, is in that arena, and that, like, in that space where it's like, oh, like, people are just tired of it. Like, I'm just tired of the bullshit. Like, I'm into certain, like, I'm looking for new ideas and new people, new voices, and people saying like transgressive shit, and people pushing boundaries, and you know what I mean? Like, and see, they don't want,
Authenticity.
right, authenticity. That's a good word, because that pretty much sums up my whole problem with everything, is a lack of authenticity on
Mhm.
all sides. Like, I just don't feel none of this is authentic. I don't feel any of it's authentic. I don't feel the outrage is authentic. I don't feel the fucking overt calls, like the dog whistles from like the racist, as authentic. I don't feel any of it's authentic. Like, I feel like it's all performative. It's all for show. And it's all to make sure, like, yo, I'm just got to say these things because I'm supposed to say this and be on brand, because we look
Yeah.
at everything as a brand now, which I despise.
Mhm.
I despise branding. But again, capitalism, like, everything is a fucking brand.
You could
Like,
argue that we have brands though too, just
right,
by
but
virtue of being having
and it's like,
personality.
but this is what I mean though. Like, you can't escape it. So
Mhm.
like the only thing you can do is like, okay, I'm in this. I'm part of this. How do I fucking fight back within it? You know what I mean? Like, I understand that I'm implicit in, or complicit in this shit. But
Mhm.
if I understand that, at least I can do something about it. At least I can, like, use okay, I'm engaging in capitalism, I'm in this self-branding shit. Okay, so how can I use it to fuck shit up? How can I use this to be like a fucking, how can I be like a prankster within this, you know what I mean? And not in like a trolling way, but in a way that's like, yeah, I'm gonna push your buttons because like I don't agree with this shit. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, no, this isn't the way, this isn't the correct way we go about making things better. Like
Yeah.
repression is not the way to go. Like you can't repress shit. Like you just can't. Any sort of like repression or suppression, like it's gonna fucking, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna cause some sort of opposite effect that you didn't want to begin with. And it's like somebody's got to be like so we have to return to being adults. Like right now, there's no adults. Like right now, there's none. Again, there's no fucking adults. And it's like, and I hate that argument because it's like I see that liberals say that, like they think like, oh, like you guys, you lefties, you fucking commies, you guys are fucking, let the adults in the room handle this. That's one of their favorite things to say. It's like, oh, fuck you. You know what I mean? But like, what I mean by that is like, we can't even have, you talk about the adult in the room, we can't even say certain words without you flipping and having a fucking seizure. You know what I mean? Or you really give a shit about like Captain Marvel, like some fucking asshole says that Captain Marvel sucks, and they're, what I mean? Like I couldn't even imagine getting mad about that. Like, but meanwhile, the person
who cares?
So interested in like the crossover between the X-Men being in the Marvel universe now that the fucking corporate merger between Disney and Fox it's like I can't even imagine caring about that. But you have 40-plus-year-old men who give a shit about, who will talk to you about that shit like they're like you're a baby. You know what I mean? That's how I look at it. You're a big fucking baby, and then you want to talk to me about, you want to talk down to everyone else, like, oh, you fucking millennial fuckhead, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, no, you don't know what you're fucking talking about, and you are the one who contributed to the guy who we have now in the Oval Office. Like, he's a response to you fuckers. You know what I mean? Like he's more of an indictment of a certain generation, not only a certain class. You know what I'm saying? In America as a whole, because he's kind of the perfect figurehead for America. Like, because when somebody talks about an American asshole, he's like that. You know what I mean? Like he embodies all of that shit. But like, so do these other fucking people, and they just don't understand that. Yeah. So.
No, I think that you're totally right, and I think you're right about infantilizing culture, like where it's like male babies, and I also think we're like pushing men to be like feminized in a way where it's like it's gonna fuck up. Like I feel like if we have a problem with like these angry incel males on the internet, it's gonna get even worse because men are being told like you're not allowed to be masculine, you're not allowed to think about sex, you're not allowed to like you're not allowed to have any aggression or anger, any of these things that are just natural human like things to have. And it's like going to create this whole like underground that's just like, it already exists, but it's going to just proliferate because it's like people are feeling like there's something wrong with me. It's like this shamed.
Yeah, I do worry about that, but I feel like
I mean, it's not like doesn't affect me in any way.
It doesn't affect
I kind of don't care, but I feel kind of sad for them too, because it's like kind of fucked up that we're making all these people feel so bad. Like, oh, I'm a toxic man. Like it's but I feel like I don't know.
I feel like there's a certain type of personality who that shit's gonna, like, because I feel like as a man and like just as I walk around in the world, like I don't see a lot of men worrying about that shit.
No,
like no, like not at least not where I'm at.
I don't see anybody worrying about it, but I feel like I see all these phony like male feminists where it just make me want to puke. Where I'm like, I mean, they're doing it to get pussy, so I guess good for them. They figured it out, but it's like I don't want to hang out with those people.
The type of women that would actually give that guy pussy, the men don't want to fuck them anyway. Like it's like, that's a like, I don't know, like there's all men do is make fun of motherfuckers like that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like most men are like, look at this guy, like what the fuck is he like, what are you doing? Like, you know what I mean? So like
embarrassing. Yeah, they're just
and there's a certain type, there's a very specific type, they're typically like white feminists. There's a specific type that very like skinny. Does that right, and they want to like fucking like I don't know, they're like they want to like they take some, maybe it's like a BDSM thing or something, because they really like to emasculate certain men, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like there's just certain guys who are like, that's just not gonna fly. Like you're like, no, and I feel like that's a thing, and there is definitely a bunch of like, I feel sorry for those guys who do fall under that umbrella, which and I do believe there's gonna be some sort of like weird, like the incel thing is, I don't know how much that is a reflection of that type of shit. But I do think like, yeah, I do think about that where I'm like, huh. But like, I feel like we're having these discussions about gender that we just do not have the capacity to like have an actual, uh, once again, a nuanced discussion or an
Yeah.
adult grown up discussion about like
Yeah.
gender roles and all that. We don't know how to do that in a way that's constructive or
Well,
healthy. Like we
it's
don't.
so infuriating too, where it's like I don't know, people lie to themselves because they think like somehow admitting a scientific fact is gonna mean that, oh, like something bad about themselves as a person. Like I've gotten into arguments before with female friends who are like, men and women are exactly the same, blah blah blah. It's like, what are you fucking talking about? That is
Yeah,
not
not
true.
true.
There's
And
a
we should.
reason most of my friends are guys, and it's because I feel like I can relate to them more. But although I am the incel personality type, I was like, I wonder what the Myers-Briggs breakdown is of incels. And INTPs are usually like, it's incels are usually INTPs or INTJs. So I'm like, maybe just because I see the world through incel glasses, I don't really know. But it's like, I don't even know where I was going with that.
No, I feel like, yeah, there's gonna be some like fucked up people from all of this shit. Sadly, you know what I mean? Like there's gonna be some fucked up people. Like uh this whole idea like that the genders aren't different. Like that's crazy. Like you know what I mean? Like okay,
Yeah.
if there wasn't different, then we wouldn't. This whole idea of toxic masculinity wouldn't be a thing
Oh, good
because
point.
we're all the same. Like we're all the same, right? So what the fuck is toxic masculinity? We're
Yeah.
obviously not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're obviously not, and we need to be honest about that in order to make any sort of like actual progress. Like we're not gonna fucking make any fucking progress until people
Yeah.
stop being ashamed of who they are, like
Mm.
and learn to be ashamed for the right shit. Like
Yeah.
no, like there's things to be ashamed about. Like
Oh,
there's
for
literal things
sure.
like behavior and like belief systems that are like, yeah, I should be ashamed that I hold that belief or I've done that thing. But
Mm.
just things like gender, there's nothing to be ashamed about. Like if you're a man, you're
Yeah.
a man. If you're a masculine man, you're a man. Cool. There's nothing to be ashamed about. Just like if you're a very feminine woman, or if you're not, like what? That's nothing to be ashamed about. But it's like people want
Yeah.
and here's my thing: it's a simulated ethnicity. This is what it is. See, like
Mm.
a lot of like white like feminist types use the gender thing as a simulated ethnicity. Like you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
so they're like, I'm tired of getting shut down by black people on Twitter. So like my simulated ethnicity now is I'm a woman. It's like, no, it's not the same shit. Like it's not. It's like I'm not discounting any sort of women's struggle, but it's not the same shit. Like, but everybody
Yeah.
now is simulating their ethnicity. Like there are people who are
Oh,
they
yeah.
like you know what I mean? It's like whatever group you can attach yourself to now, that's what I
Yep.
am, and I'm part
Yep.
of this group. And as a blank, I da da da. Like you know, everybody prefaces as a whatever before because again, it's this weird thing of like
People
you
I
need
know are doing it. It's
right, you
embarrassing
need
to
to
me. I'm like,
be.
you know what you're doing?
It's
You're
like
just trying
okay,
to be marginalized.
right, because what they want to do is they want to be in a protected class, so they're above questioning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like so, again, so boils back to they don't want to have conversations. They don't. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm just totally anti that. Like you can't be you can't have any sort of meaningful interactions with anybody walking around thinking that way, like
Yeah.
thinking like I'm fucking can't be questioned. My little if you break any sort of like these superficial ideas that I have in my head that somebody else gave me, if you break any sort of like if you break into that sphere that or that's this giant fucking bubble boy fucking sphere that I'm living that I've created for myself. You break into that, I'm gonna lose it, and I can't. You're not allowed to do that, and you're further repressing me, and I'm a part of a protected class, even though I'm not. You know, like that's the attitude that I see a lot of like grown-ups have now, and
Yeah.
a lot of artists, which is they should be a fucking shame of themselves.
Yes, I agree. Although I would argue that none of the talented ones are
I
of that
agree.
mindset.
I agree. I agree a lot about that.
I
And
think it's like
I would
a
say like
product of like not having your
Tarantino is a
own
perfect
vision.
example of that, right? Tarantino is a perfect example of that. Like the people that want to cancel him so bad, like there are some people that I understand, like they want to cancel him because they're jealous of that guy.
Yeah.
Like you know, there's a lot of things you can say about Tarantino. There's a lot of shit you can be like, oh, he's problematic in a lot of ways. Yeah, fine, whatever. But like you can't deny, like the guy has chops. Like he knows how to, you know, like he does a thing, and like you got to respect it on that, like on that base level. You don't have to
Yeah.
respect him, but like there are people who are untalented as fuck that want to
Yeah.
supplant him. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? There are people who make lesser films who want to take over and be like, I want his spot, cancel him, fuck him.
Yeah.
There's a Canadian duo. There's a Canadian duo who are adamantly anti-Tarantino. They want
Are
him
you
killed. Like
talking about Saskas?
of course,
They are so untalented, and they pander so much
so
to the
much.
male audience. It's like, can you see my boobs, sister?
Exactly. The whole reason
I
they have
can't
a
even go
career,
on.
the whole reason, like their first movie was it was a
It
homage
was
to
horrible.
Tarantino. It
Oh,
was Dead Hooker in the Trunk is nothing but Tarantino references and shit, right? So now they're like, they should be fortunate enough to understand that, like, yo, we're marketed as this. We're the two twin chicks with our boobs pushed up. Like that's what our thing is. We use that to market. We're edgy. We're the whatever, the twisted twins. They use that, right? As their marketing tool to have an audience for their movies. But their
yeah.
movies they don't make good movies.
No, they sell their movies via sex. They sell
They sell
sex.
movies through their personality. It's like a Kevin Smith thing. You know, I like Kevin Smith, but like his movies aren't about, they're about him. They're like, people aren't,
Yeah.
they're not into Kevin Smith because they like the movies. They're into Kevin Smith because they're into Kevin Smith. And I look at the Soskas.
Yeah, I like his old movies, but
right. I like his old movies too, but like I feel like he's more of he's that brand. Like he's gonna get the Kevin Smith fans to show up regardless.
yeah, he's the comic book guy.
They've cultivated their own little weird thing of like, I don't know who likes that, but they're obviously they can get finance and get movies made. But like every time Tarantino comes up, they're like, cancel him, he's a fucking piece of shit. And I'm like, who the fuck are you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, nobody cares about your opinion. Like, you just want his spot. But even if he went away,
yeah, they do. They just want his spot.
Even if he went away, you're not taking his spot.
Because you can't make good enough art, motherfucker.
Exactly. And on that note, I have to run.
Oh shit! Okay. Wow, this is 90 minutes. So people got their not money's worth or whatever their money's worth for no money. But
we can rant for hours about this shit.
I know. I love it. Thank you so much, Ryan.
But yeah, man.
Ryan at Ryan Jackson on Twitter.
Yeah. Ryan Jackson.
Anything you want to pimp to my 3 followers?
No, nothing. Not now. If I do something, hopefully people will find it. Like I don't want to be that much of a whore. All right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye.